Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. Welcome to the show, everybody. Yes, I'm laughing, I'm giggling because Rochelle is so fast. She was gone there and then she's back, and then she hit it right at the right time. She's so talented, I have to say. And we've got a great show for you today. We've got an author. His name is Michael Pepper, and Rochelle. We are going to talk about in depth about his writing style, what he does, and stuff. But would you like to introduce him?
Yes, we are welcoming Michael Pepper. Hey, how are you doing? Thank you for
I'm
being
terrific.
here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
And I enjoyed the synopsis of your book very, very much because, and I want to delve into this a little bit because. And basically the premise of the story is that in the spring of 1971, that was a year or two before you were born, Michelle.
Whoa.
And he graduated from Princeton University, and then he needed a place to stay. And then he found one of the things that I want to focus on during this episode is the relationship that we have with younger people and older people, because he met a gal by the name of Ella, and then he learned about her when he went to live there. He learned about her remarkable past, and so the story continues. But I really wanted to get in touch with the fact of we have got a lot of really, really talented people who just happen to be a little longer in the tooth and have been around a little bit longer. And we need, I think, all of us need to work together and to utilize those gifts and the experiences that the older among us have had to to help teach the younger ones of us what not to do and stuff. So so Michael, is that why you wrote the book, as kind of a feeling that way? I know it's a part, at least part of it's a true story that I know of.
It's a true story. It's amazing for me to be at this stage of life, realizing I'm Ella's age. I'm nearing her age, and yet when I graduated, I was 22, and I was able to, have this relationship. I was very lucky in looking for a place to live, and it happened to be a very emotionally sensitive time in my life, because as I graduated from Princeton with all the regalia and excitement and enthusiasm, optimism, I was subject to the draft, and I'd already lost a good friend in the Vietnam War. So yes, the friendship between a young man at the beginning of his life and an aging woman at the end of her life is the essence of the story.
And for those of us that are a little younger, when he says draft, he doesn't mean like when you leave your window open and it's windy and there's a draft going through your house. This is service that you had to go do, unless you were Muhammad Ali, who is Cassius Clay, and then you didn't do that. But the army could draft you and draft you into service. And most of the kids that got drafted into the service ended up in Vietnam, because at any given time there are 500,000 soldiers in America, 500,000 soldiers in Vietnam and stuff. Fortunately, I'm just a shade younger than Michael, and so By the time I graduated from high school, the draft had been eliminated because the war was over. But that was a scary moment in time because Michael, were you scared to go to your mailbox?
Oh, I was definitely afraid. And the way it worked is there was a lottery system, and the lottery took place on TV live. Um, um, uh, a bunch of ping pong balls in a giant glass box. Each one had a date on it, from January 1st through the end of the year. That year, there were 366 days, a leap year. And depending on when your birth date was pulled, that in the sequence, that told you, where you were in line to be drafted. And it was very frightening. So the first step was, you saw if you had a number that had been drafted in the prior year, there was a good likelihood, because the draft continued at a similar pace, that upon graduation, when you would become immediately eligible for the draft, that one would be called to service. And there were, some escape routes, not necessarily legal, going to Canada, going to Northern Europe. You were told at that time, if you did that, you wouldn't be allowed to re-enter the United States. Although at one point, many years later, that was relief was given to those who left. Um, so you knew from the get-go that if you were a number in the mid 150s range like myself, that there was a good chance that you'd be called to service.
And the really unfortunate thing about that, and I just want to share this real briefly. The unfortunate thing about the draft was, if you were a predominantly white, rich person, you could find ways to get out of the draft. There are people that got out of the draft by claiming physical disabilities or bone spurs and things like that. So predominantly what ended up happening is people who could not get out of the draft because of they didn't have any money or whatever. So it became predominantly a larger portion of our African American kids ended up going there. At least that's my understanding, Michael. You might know better than me, but there were people who got out of the draft creatively, we'll say.
Oh, absolutely. And in the opening chapters of my book, I review myself giving consideration to all those opportunities, whether it was going to an orthodontist, which I actually did do, because some of my teeth could use straightening. They didn't have orthodontists in the military, and if you could prove you needed orthodontistry, that was a way out. Funny things happened to me while I was sitting in the orthodontist chair. And in the end, I decided I couldn't do that. I couldn't, after meeting with a psychologist who could write a letter, that I wasn't fit, or write a letter saying I needed certain psychological balancing drugs. I decided in the end that those escape hatches were nothing I wanted to do. At the same time, I had a father who was a war hero in World War II, and he actually achieved a Distinguished Flying Cross when he was only 21 years old. Flying a bomber, leading a bombing squadron over on flights from Italy over the Alps and into Germany. I never even knew about his military record until that period of my life. But so in the end, what you see is me saying, I'm going to play it out. I'm not going to find some way of bending the rules and getting out, even though I saw that happen with other people. And in the end, what happens is the government had to extend the draft law. and there were debates that went on in Congress because it had an expiration date. And the debate went on for long enough, 2 or 3 months. And during that time period, all drafting halted. So that was the time when I would have been called. And because of that period of congressional debate, they never got to my number. So yes, I had that
Wow.
year in limbo, worried about being drafted, and this amazing thing happened,
Mhm.
on the floor of the House and the Senate, and that's what ultimately got me out of having to be drafted. You never forget the scars and the thinking and all that I went through. But what is interesting is today, a youth has no idea. They think it could never happen. And we see that things can happen unilaterally in our government, and they can take a lot of time to unwind. But if we got called into a dispute, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some type of initiation again of a call to service.
And I love what they called it. They called it selective service.
Right.
So you get to be selected to be of service, whether you want to be of service or not.
It
And
is
then if
interesting. Yeah.
if you don't know how to duck real well, or if you're not, like, and they were drafting people all the way. Now in World War II, they drafted people all the way up to 45. I don't think they did that in Vietnam because they had enough people. But our friend Brachelle here, do you have a question for Michael? Because I'm going to unceremoniously kick you off the show in about 5 minutes.
Yes, so Michael, I would love to ask you about a moment of time that you still think about that was so impactful, um, and what made you encouraged to write the book. Um, really, just whatever it was, whether that was with somebody you met or something that happened or just something that you experienced once you had really just dove into yourself and understood things in a bigger space.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Many things led to actually putting the book together, but there is one thing that's outstanding. I have 3 daughters, and when they
Mhm.
were young, we would go on these very long hikes, sometimes to areas like the Cotswolds in England, and we'd have an 8-day hike, and we'd be hiking all day, and then we'd stay at an inn. It was all prearranged, and these hikes could be difficult at times for younger girls. Um, uh, their mother had gotten uh, ill years before, and we all, had to deal with that. Um, and it was hard for them. It was hard for me. So the hikes brought relief at times. Got us out in nature. Had to think more in terms of being in the moment. And there was a time on one of the hikes where my youngest daughter, who was in the range of 12 or 13 at the time, just burst out crying, and we gathered around her, and she asked what was going on, and she started talking about how difficult things were at home, especially with a mother that was mostly not there, and when she was there, not fully mentally present, and uh, it did bring to my awareness how important sharing the story of Ella, who lived this incredibly beautiful life as a countess, and then it was taken away from her um, during a time when the Russian Revolution slaughtered most of her family. And we grew as a relationship. Me as a young man, her as an older woman. We had dinners, we had guests, but we talked a lot. And she encouraged me at the time directly or indirectly by telling me her stories, um, to know that life could be very challenging in different ways. Mine wasn't the Russian Revolution. My daughter's, wasn't Vietnam. But I got from her, a life formula for, being positive, expecting that things can go wrong and not to let them halt your life, but to find ways to keep on going. So it was after that experience with my youngest daughter, all of us together, that I just decided to start collecting memories from my time with Ella and putting it together into the book that became Royal Edge.
Yeah.
And you've had quite the life, young man. When we come back, we're going to talk about his world travels and going all over the place, and the work that he's done. And then suddenly, someplace in the midst of time, a little bit later in life, he decides to become an author. And that anybody can do that if you choose to do that. When we come back, you're going to have, dare I say it, just me, because I'm going to make Rochelle go on a hike now with her family, and that's an important aspect of everything that we do. And family is so important. Anything else you'd like to add before we go, Rochelle?
No, I think I ended on a transition that is good for Michelle,
Yes.
and my daughter, who I was referring to, is also named Michelle. So that's sounds like a setup, but it's totally coincidence. Have a great time on your hike with your family, Michelle. Nice to
Thank
meet you.
you so, so much. You as well. I cannot wait to see you again, Michael. Please take care. Thank you for having me, Kevin. And I'm actually going on this hike as a challenge to see if it's harder or easier than before we just walked 15 miles a day in Seattle. So it goes along with everything you just said. Thank you so much for sharing that story, Michael. And I love you all. So have fun.
Thank you. Thank you.
And take care, young lady. And it's always, by the way, you're not, I'm not having you on. You are part of this show. So get that through your skull, would you please?
Okay, okay. I'm sorry. I got it.
And don't be sorry. Here I am giving you all kinds of, anyway, thank you. Go ahead and tell
Thank
your
you.
family that we love them and to take care.
Oh, will do. Thank you, Michael.
Take care.
And Michael, we're going to take this break and we'll be right back.
At 67 years young, I never thought I'd feel this good again. But thanks to Purium's Ultimate Transformation Lifestyle, to date, I've lost 37 pounds and gained energy, confidence, and a whole new outlook on life. This isn't a diet. Purium is a complete lifestyle change, giving me all the natural, organic, nutrition-packed superfoods that fuel my body, crush my cravings, and help me burn fat naturally without starving myself. No gimmicks, no guesswork, just a simple, proven system that works. Superfood shakes, detox support, and real results. If I can do this at 67, imagine what you can do. It's your time to feel better, look better, and live better with Purium. Let's do it now, and let's do it together. Go to www.positivetalkradio.net and click on the Transform You to get started. That's positivetalkradio.net. Transform You.
And welcome back, everybody, to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And that's me, by the way. And Michael Pepper is with us. He's an author. He's written the book Royal Edge. And it really is a heartfelt book because it's about generations and young and older and experience and things that we all have done. But I wanted to ask you, because you were a architect, is that right? And traveled the world, or you enjoyed designing, developing, and constructing big, tall buildings.
Exactly.
These days, it's principle of, hey, look at that. It's Pepper Development Services. You must be the boss.
Yeah, that's one way to let people know that they're meeting the boss. Yeah, so it wasn't always my company. I mean, I worked for some very big companies early in my career. Yes, I majored in architecture at Princeton. Years later, I went to graduate school at University of Chicago, business, and I combined those two in my career. My my early introduction to skyscrapers came with a job working for the Tishman family. They built the first 100-story building in the world. They built the Hancock building. When I came on board, they were working on the World Trade Center. I got to work on several buildings with them, and then with other companies, working my way up the ladder, learning the business of managing design, construction, all the economics involved, the interface with the city, just fantastic, fun career stuff. I'm very lucky that I had the career I did.
So when was it that you said to yourself, because you're an architect and you're traveling the world and you're going all over the place and doing great stuff, and you had 3 daughters that you raised with your wife, but when was the desire to start writing? When did that, has that always been there and you just didn't have time for it, or was that something that you said, I really need to write this book?
Yeah, so it was generated from, I'd love to read. When I had time, I would find something to read. So I love the let's say the art of storytelling, and a good storyteller um, was something that I admired. It took me time to understand that this was the story I wanted to share. And when it came to me, and it wasn't until that moment when I was hiking with my daughters that I realized this is the story that I want to share. And on subsequent hikes, I would take my cell phone with me, and I'd recall episodes with Ella, or at that period of my life, and I would tape record them. And then I had a whole mess of tape recordings, and had to put a timeline together to the telling of the story. I probably didn't realize when I stepped in, how complicated of an effort it would be,
Yep.
especially when it's a true story. So it wasn't like I could take tangents and simply create something. I wanted to create something by assembling experiences that I actually had. So it all did pretty much start on those hikes when the girls were very, very young, and it took a long time to assemble the tape recordings, and then to put together a storyline.
So how many years did it take, do you think?
So for me, because I continued to work as a consultant advisor, it was a good 3 or 4 years. It wasn't a full-time committed effort. It was, when I had time. But as it came together, sure, there was more excitement, and let's bring this to a conclusion, and let's make this into something that would be interesting to bring to an audience.
Now, did you self-publish or did you go through a publisher?
So I look at the publishing route. It was difficult because I had no track record as a writer. So
Right.
I could wave some interesting facts about my career, but that wasn't what they were looking for. So the quick refusals, on that front. And at one point, because I didn't like when I would be quickly, set aside, or the story would be. I saw that there was an opportunity to self-publish. So self-publishing for me involved having someone review and critique, and all of the spell and grammar checks, and then starting to assemble it as a book and hiring a person who could produce the cover. And then I got into a production mode, and there are outlets like Amazon where you can put a self-published book out there for promotion. And I got a bunch of good reviews, and I say a bunch because it's too small of a number. Beautiful reviews, people that I knew, but mostly people that I've never met, never known. It's difficult to get footing on that, and I've got some ideas and some things in the works now that could lead to a greater audience awareness that the book is out there and it's available.
Well, and I would now. When did it come out?
So it came out about 2 years ago. About 2 years ago.
Very good.
And then I made some corrections, because I actually got a letter from a woman who lived in Princeton and knew Ella, and so I made some minor corrections, but that gave me an opportunity to set a new publication date, which I needed to get my book into a queue for what's called the Jewish Book Council, which is a fairly big national organization where if they accept your book, they will make the author available to go on tour with outlets throughout the nation of the Jewish Book Council organization. Not that it's a Jewish book, but there's enough of that in there that allowed me to go on this broader promotion, and so that's upcoming, and that's fairly exciting.
Yes, indeed. Do you have any idea how many places that you're going to go? Because you're going to go to bookstores and to do talks and that kind of stuff about your book, right?
So I don't know yet. What they do is they give me it's somewhere in the range of 6 minutes of a spot, and it will be live, and as many of their members who want to listen do. And then after they hear you, they can invite you. And there are many functions throughout the nation and beyond that I could be invited to, and they pay the way if that happens. That's all coming up in the next few months, and I'm excited about it. So that could be the promotion that gets me to greater awareness of that the book is even out there.
Well, and it takes time, like anything else. Podcasting takes time, being an author and getting the work out, and there's a lot of marketing that you have to do with it, and that kind of stuff. And being on podcasts is a great way to also get the word out about your book and what you're doing. So, by the way, we're talking with Michael Pepper, and if you go to his website, which is michaelpepper.net, you can find out all about him, and I even suspect that you can probably buy the book from him on that. And I would is that true? Can they buy the book on the website?
They probably can find their way, but Amazon Books is a good one, and Barnes and Noble is a good one, and Goodreads is a good one. Those are all websites that offer the book for sale.
And I recommend, because I like mom and pop booksellers, and if you want to get the book, here's what you do. You go to your local mom and pop bookstore and you say, "Hey, do you have Royal Edge by Michael Pepper?" And they'll say, "Who?" And no, and they'll say,
They will
let me
say,
look it up. Then they go in their computer and they don't have it, but they can order it. So I highly suggest that you go to a local mom and pop, because we need to support these guys before they go out of business, and then buy the book from them. And they might even pick up an extra copy or two to put on their shelves, which would be good for them and good for Michael. And it's a really good, got a great story behind it, and it's very interesting. So we need to take a break, or a halftime break, if you will. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about your writing style and how many times did you have to send it to the editor before you were done. I've heard some horror stories around that from people, but we will be right back after this.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hey, we are here with Michael Pepper. He's an author. He's written the book Royal Edge, and it has to do with when he was a young man. And by the way, what kind of grades do you have to get to Ivy League in the architectural department? You must be pretty smart there, fella.
It's probably more competitive today than ever. One of the things I do actually is I have done this for years. I interview applicants, and so my class didn't have women. Now more than half of each class is women, um, um, and I can see the caliber of student that's accepted is it's incredible. So the classes are twice as large now, but still the odds are they're very long odds to get in, and part of it involves luck. There's no question.
Well, and your dad was a World War II vet. He drove a bomber, which, by the way, I know he's probably passed now.
Yeah, he has.
But we will thank him for his service anyway.
Yeah.
And also, he's a lucky man, because so many of the pilots that flew bombers in World War II never came back.
Half the people who were in the B-24s never made it home. Half.
I know you knew your dad, but I have to tell you that knowing that you have a 50% chance of not coming back and still going takes the kind of bravery that is amazing to me. And I'm not quite sure how I would handle that, because the odds are not, they're not great, but it takes a special sort of bravery to do that.
Yeah, and the odds hopefully are a lot better today. But remember, I mean, they were developing planes, they were developing jeeps, they were developing water landing craft at that time. So sure, they had tremendous tremendous losses. Can I just share a story of
Of
how I
course.
even found out my father did this? Because he never talked about it. Um, we when we were young children, we being my sister and I, our younger sister hadn't been born yet. My mom was pregnant, and we would at the time that I remember, we were in South Haven, Michigan, where we would spend a week or two each summer. And after dinner, my mom washing dishes, my dad would take my older sister and I for a walk, a beach walk. We'd walk down to the beaches of South Haven, and he could point out every star pattern, and whether it's Big Dipper, Little Dipper, but he could go on and on. And I never knew why he knew that stuff until later in life when I understood, he was a navigator. It was part of what he had to learn. And what got him the Distinguished Flying Cross was that his navigation equipment got shot out as they were flying over Germany, and he was the lead navigator. So you had 10 people in a plane. You had 100 people that were counting on him being able to lead with navigation equipment, and it was because he could read the stars. They flew above the cloud level. They saw the stars, and he was able to guide his crew back over the Alps to the base in Naples, Italy. So it's just interesting, different war stories, and that's and you know what? I have the radio spot when he was interviewed when he came back from the war, and he's being interviewed just like you're talking to me now, but it's not visual, and they typed it up. They must have had someone typing it up as he was talking, and they were asking questions. Part of it was, to raise money for war bonds, but asking questions um, about what happened that day. And he was excited that he was home that weekend, and he was excited about marrying my mother that weekend. And it's just interesting to you read the radio spot where the announcer is trying to get the war story, and his story was he was excited, he was alive, and he was going to marry my mother that weekend. I had the spot.
Oh, that is so cool. That is so cool. Well, most of the guys who fought in World War II did not voluntarily share much information about what they saw, what
Yeah,
they heard, what they felt, because it was a very horrific thing, and they just wanted to bury the memory, I think.
that's right. That's right. Uh, the, my friends, when we would talk about it, I mean, very few exceptions, all would say, yeah, their dad had some major experience in World War II, but never spoke about it. Yeah,
Well,
that
yeah,
generation.
they were, and they've been termed the greatest generation, and I believe it to be true. Because they, to a man, all of them being 18, 19, 20 in that age group, all the way actually up to 35, but most of them were younger. And then to go to Normandy on D-Day, or the Italy, the campaign in Italy, or Africa, or even Guadalcanal and in the Pacific. These gentlemen and ladies were the toughest of the tough, and it's amazing that they did that, but they made America what it is today. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely do agree. They made America what it is today in many ways, but especially in the generation that they raised. With the support of their having, volunteered, dedicated their lives. People like me, not knowing till later the sacrifices that he made. I see that now, and we can't simply assume that that's how the reactions will be. If there's more calls to duty. Uh, that's why I think it's a good idea to step back and think about all that. We are different than that generation, and the generations that follow us are different from us. Um,
Yes, they really are. So you were born, and I love talking about this because number
yeah,
one, you've got a lot of experience. You're older now, but I'm guessing that you were born in the late 40s, early 50s.
so I was born in 1949, and
Ah,
Ella was born in the 1890s. So I mean, if you see, that step, me, a young man, an older woman at the end of his life and her life, and yet being able to be talk friends. I mean, I was at her dinner table every night. There were a few exceptions on weekends, but on weekends typically there were guests. It was the same guests, and to have that opportunity to talk like we're talking about Vietnam, but her war was the Russian Revolution, right? So I got an inside view of a young person, with a royal background, telling me what happened to her during the revolution, and it did prepare me for life in many ways.
it did, and just think of now. How old was she when she passed?
So she was nearing 80. And and I've looked this up. If you're born in the early 1890s in Europe, you're pretty old at 80, older than we would think of someone today being at 80. So she was aging. She could get around. She had a walking stick, but she pretty much stayed in the house. But she was completely lucid when it came to talking and recalling events of her earlier days.
So the world changed so much during her lifetime. When she was born, there were no cars, or there were very few cars.
No, yeah, there were no cars. There's so much that didn't exist in her lifetime that she got to see. Of course, there's more in our lifetime that we got to see developed, and who knows going forward. But yeah, she came from a horse and buggy day. There's a chapter that I write about where we're talking about when was the first time you had a drink. She's asking me, I'm asking her, and she was a very young girl, about to get into what's referred to as a troika. It's a horse-driven sleigh with three horses, troika. And it was a winter day, and her mother's putting her in the seat, and there's a driver, and gives her a nip of cold vodka. Um, right, right, and then she's in the sleigh, headed towards her cousins. They were all royal, and they would gather at what we would call a castle today. Um, but just stories like that we would share and laugh about at times, but so different than my experience. And that started with you and I talking about, yeah, there were no cars. It was a horse and buggy when she entered the world.
Now, I don't want you to um, tell us anything that's in the book, but I am curious if she had, because she'd had a really interesting life being in Russia and going through the revolution, and so many people died during that and stuff, and then she made it here. What was her? What would you say was her viewpoint of her life as she was getting older, um, and did she appreciate everything that she'd been through, and what kind of advice did she give you as a 22-year-old going forward?
Well, I'll answer the latter part, and then the earlier part. The latter part um, um, was, to simply be prepared. Life's going to have its challenges, and there are various ways you can prepare, knowing that there will be challenges along the way, so that you're not shocked when they come up. Um, the former part of the question has been with me since I sat at her table, and it became more and more clear to me as I grew older that what I was learning from her is that you don't need to be born royal to live a royal life. So she was stripped of her royalty. Her family, uh, didn't survive in large part. But did she give up the her way of royalty? And how I define that is not having servants, but to celebrate the things you think are most important and beautiful in life. And it was music and art and good conversation and reading, and um, she spoke many languages, so we had many different interesting people at our house that she could talk with and translate to me. But the essence that I carry with me is you don't have to be born royal to live a royal life. And I've tried to live my life knowing that. Um, and it sticks with me.
Well, and it's led you to a life that you appreciate and you're grateful for. You've done very well in life, and that is a lesson for all of us. You don't have to be born royal to live a royal life. I just love that. We're going to make a bumper sticker out of that.
Yeah,
Again,
and I love hearing you say that, and I agree. It's true. When someone hears it the first time, they may say it's a little hokey to just say that. It's easy to say that. It's easier said than done. It's like, no, look at the way I've lived my life, and I've continued to, to look back, that this woman has been part of my life, subconscious. She's been there, and I feel lucky to have had her perspective on living, even though she had some grave tragedies that would in other people have taken her royalty away from her. Never.
but she never let that define her.
Mm-mm. No.
And that is a great story, and it's a great story for all of us to learn by, that no matter what your circumstances, you are born great and you can rise above it. Again, we're talking with Michael Pepper. He's the author of the book Royal Edge. Run out and get that book, please. It's a great book.
Yeah.
We're going to be right back after our final break, Michael, and it's just 30 seconds, so everybody just settle down. We'll be right back.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew. A girl so smart, so responsible. She must be a keeper.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, and Michael Pepper is here. He is an author of note. He was in the Ivy League when he was young. He's a smart fella, and Princeton University is where he graduated from in 1971, and He's written the book, and it's been out a couple of years, but he's just now deciding to get around to do some marketing for it, and podcasts are a great way to do it, and this is a great podcast to do it on. And so we're grateful for you coming, Michael.
Thank you.
And the book has got some great reviews to it, and it is something that I just love that you had the really the benefit of having somebody who was experienced and had some wisdom and had been through life when you were a real young guy, so that you could take some of her lessons, like you don't have to be royalty to live a royal life. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal it if you don't mind.
Steal it. Bumper sticker.
Exactly. And stuff. So you got that early in life, and that has served you well over time, hasn't it?
Oh, very, very much so. It has served me well. Yeah. And I mean, I continued to be lucky, but part of it, finding good experiences, like not everyone would have seen the opportunity to meet Ella, and maybe people would have spent time with her and not gotten her to talk about the things we talked about, or me having opportunities I had with my career. It's partly my view and the things that I was interested in, and a lot of it, just like my dad would say, that don't discount the role that luck plays in your life. Do your homework. My mother would say, do your work, do your homework. And my dad would say, don't discount luck, because he knew the other navigators had done as much work as him, and his navigation skills saved him and many people that were flying on that mission. But luck also was there. You could do all of that right, but it also takes luck. And my luck was that day. So I was walking down Nassau Street in downtown Princeton. A woman was trying to get out of a grocery store that still exists there on Nassau Street. An older woman pulling a cart of food out of a grocery store. And so I stepped by and held the door open for her. I was on a walk looking for a place to live. And she looked up at me and said, thank you. It turned out that was Ella's sister who was visiting for the weekend. And I asked her if she knew of a place to rent. And she said, come with me. And we ended up walking to the house that I lived in for the next nine months. What was interesting was they needed someone to replace the priest that had been living there in the room that I was ultimately going to move into. They needed someone. So that's when her sister takes me on this walk. She's got the grocery cart. And we end up at the house. And that day I took a tour. I looked at the room and I said, I'll take it. I went home afterwards for a week to unload my college stuff. But it was as much of that was simply a coincidence. And part of life is seeing the opportunity when it's there. And so it was luck, and it was seeing that the opportunity was there.
And I would venture to guess that it wasn't a coincidence that you were destined to meet each other. And
so the way that first meeting ends is I'm leaving the house. I'm walking out the door, and I look back, and her sister is holding the door open, and she says to me, "You were sent to us, you know." I never forgot that. Who, as a young man, would ever forget someone saying that to them? You were sent to us, you know. And there was a priest living in the room that I would ultimately live in. I felt that it wasn't just coincidence, and I let the reader, make that decision for themselves. I don't promote that, but I certainly believe that it was not just luck that got me there.
Oh no, there was a divine intervention or
Yeah.
divine presence
Yeah,
in all of that.
yeah, I believe that.
And well, she as much said it, because it was like, how many times would that ever happen, where she goes to the store and at that exact particular time you show up, you hold the door open for her, and then you ask a question, and she has a room that the priest just moved out on, and they needed the money and they needed somebody to fill that room so that they could, so all of those things just lined up perfectly.
You've got it.
And so it couldn't have happened in a better way. And also, and look at it this way also, you now, Ella's I'm sure past now,
Yeah.
but you are now going to create, or you have created, her legacy, so that her name and who she was will be remembered and read about for generations to come. That's the highest service I can think of.
Yeah. And maybe someone will pick it up and write a script, whether it's a screenplay or a live play. I think it could be just fascinating entertainment that people walk away with a message. I would love to see that happen, and I am, beginning to explore avenues of opportunity for that to happen.
See, I think that either as a play or as a movie, that this would be a great concept for going back. It's a period piece going back in time to the greatest generation, and because your dad was around then, and you were 22, and the Vietnam War was. I think it would make a great story. I hope somebody listens to this and gets in contact with Michael Pepper, and you can go to his website, michaelpepper.net, and you can talk to him about buying the rights to the script to make a movie about this incredible life story of the two. So I got to ask you, have you thought about who you'd like to play Ella?
Who always comes to mind? I mean, certainly there are some older British actors that I can see, because she had a combination of accents. But Meryl Streep usually comes to mind as my first, because she's in my generation and she should love it.
I tell you what, I was going to say Meryl Streep, because she also's got wonderful dialects that she does, and she's obviously she's a remarkable actress. So, Michael Pepper, we've got 1 minute. I want you to tell our audience anything you'd like them to know.
Oh, I would love for them to read the book and to find a way to contact me with any comments, any questions they have. I'd like them to know that this has been a pleasure to speak with you, Kevin, about Royal Edge, and let's hope we take it up from there.
So I can do, and you just trust in the luck that you have had your whole life, that it's going to continue, and there's no coincidences. It's probably just going to fall in your lap. I guarantee it. Michael, thank you so much for being here.
Kevin,
again.
Thank you.
Go to his website, michaelpepper.net, and get the book Royal Edge. You have a great day, young man, and thank you everybody for listening to this all the way to the end. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got.